Hello my soccer universe, to the review of Serie A round 37, and what a drama it was, especially in the title race, which is what I focus exclusively on. Can I just mention, all the other leagues broadcasters managed to get a multiplex or goal show or however, where all the games are happening at the same time and it switched back and forth. Serie A, at least on the zone, had me choose between games, and yes, I had only 2 screens available, so I went for Inter against Lazio and Parma against Napoli because it's a title race, and I'm more or less done with Milan, although I really would have liked to watch Roma Milan because it's my 2 favorite teams playing each other, and I missed all the nice emotions surrounding Ranieri's goodbye from the Olimpico, at least from the bench. So yeah, that was bittersweet, and I really would like that Serie A does this better. Can't we have a goal show, at least in English? I don't know, maybe they offered it in Italian, but in Italian it doesn't really help me a whole lot. I don't speak that much Italian, although by this time I already should speak at least a little bit more, as much as I love Italy. The title race was very exciting, but we ended exactly where we started. Milan out of Europe now for sure. It's just a disaster week that happened. You lose the cup final in absolutely atrocious fashion. You did not show up, especially in the second half. And then at Roma, you lose because you are down to 10 men already early on. So the writing was already on the wall. The season has gone to shit. And there's even a chance that you finish in 9th and you have to start Coppa Italia already in August. Only the top 8 get a pass into a later stage. And that's really damning. I mean, Napoli did it and they said, okay, screw Coppa Italia, we just focus on the league, and they might actually win it. To add insult to injury for Milan, the Futuro got relegated from Serie G to Serie D. This is absolutely incredible. They cannot even play most of their players who are on professional contracts. I mean, Milan is an absolute mess, and yeah, I think it needs to be blown up now. Last week I said, okay, give Conceição a chance, maybe it will work out, because I felt relatively optimistic about winning the cup final. Now, within a week I was all convinced, blow it up, and maybe you need to get now a coach in that will placate the Milan fan base. Milan fans are angry. And they had enough of it all. I don't think there will be many showing up for the final game of the season. It's even to the point, I really wanted this year to take my family finally to San Siro. I've never been at a game at the San Siro. I mean, I've seen Milan in the flesh, but I've never seen them at the San Siro. But I don't think I need to take them there because it's just such a mess. Maybe in October all things will be better. But now the management has to deliver. This shit show has to end. Now, in this video, I will focus more on all the other exciting things, which is the Champions League race, which is, of course, the relegation battle, which is also mad, and we'll talk about all the implications after we review the games. The one game that I won't talk at length about is, of course, Atalanta's 3-2 win of Genoa. A very interesting and exciting game overall, but the main storyline is that Retegui is now on 25 goals, meaning he's the highest ever goal scorer in a single season for Atalanta, beating out Pippo Inzaghi. Let's get started with this crazy title race. I gotta say, despite all the last day of the season setup in other leagues on the past weekend, nothing topped the drama, especially in the last 20 minutes that we had in Italy when Inter played Lazio and Napoli had to play at Parma. It was really crazy. So many swings. It could have been as Napoli could have been already champions. Inter could have gone with the advantage into the last match day, and in the end we end up where we all started after a really wild ride that saw all 4 involved coaches being sent off, so none of this will be present. Inzaghi will not be in Como coaching Inter, as will Conte at home against Cagliari, and we'll get to that at a later point. And it actually started out slowly. I mean, Napoli and Parma had a real hard time breaking down Parma, and Leone completely took out Lukaku. The only chance that Napoli really had was a great sombrero by Anguissa, and then the ensuing shot he puts onto the post. But that was more or less it what Napoli could produce. Whereas Inter, slow start but got back into the game. Yes, there was a huge chance for Isaks and for Lazio to give Lazio the lead. However, after a corner, I think it was a Di Marco shot that got blocked, and Bissek controls it, puts in the net in stoppage time of the first half. And my gut feeling from watching Inter for so long is that's gonna be Inter winning this game, and at that point Inter actually had the advantage in the table. However, credit where credit is due. Isaksen came off, Pedro came on, and he became the man of the match in this one, as he then in the 72nd minute gets the equalizer after a shot is deflected by Inter, I think onto Vecino, former Inter player, who then gets it to Pedro, who makes it 1-1. At that point, Napoli knew that if Lazio score 1 and they score 1, Napoli are already champions. However, Napoli had a really hard time still. Yes, McTominay with a free kick that got tapped on the bar by Suzuki came close. I think there was another one where they almost hit the post, but nothing really tangible. Where all to play in Milan, where then it was a free kick by Çalhanoğlu. I mean, everyone could see that from far out that this is dangerous, where Denzel Dumfries runs through and heads it in, even going past Thuram, who potentially had a tussle with a Lazio player, could have been taken as a foul or not. So advantage again Inter, and Inter is not gonna give up another lead. Well, they did, because as the game was ebbing and flowing and kind of pushing, it was again Lazio who needed the points to stay very much in the Champions League race. But it was actually a rather stupid action by Bissek, the hero of the first half, who basically chicken winged the ball out of Pedro's way. And the referee didn't see it at first. However, when you see it in the replay, it was pretty clear that this has to be a handball, and Pedro steps up, gets the equalizer. So Napoli having the advantage again, and then it all went wild in stoppage time. I mean, Inzaghi got desperate. He brought on Zielinski, Zalewski and Arnautovic took center stage, having a clear-cut chance that he could not put in. He then scored a goal that was disallowed, and almost at the same time a penalty was given for Napoli in Parma, a clear-cut penalty. However, there was also a foul by Simeone in the build-up, so the penalty was called back, as was the goal by Arnautovic. And so we end level after a really mad ride. It was wild. This was absolutely wild and crazy. And this is Serie A at its very, very, very best, even though the teams are very flawed. It's also got to be said. Milan completed their disaster week at the Olimpico by losing to Roma 3-1, securing that they will not be in Europe next season. What a disaster that was. And it was a very much self-inflicted loss, because they had to play for large parts of the game with a man less, but one by one. First it is Mancini who heads it in, or in the 3rd minute, to give Roma the 1-0 lead, but Milan actually tried to create something, and when Milan is down, they usually do something, at least in the league, not in the cup final. But it's then Jimenez who stupidly elbows Mancini, who makes the most out of it and gets him sent off. My only question is, why did Buchanan not get sent off in the cup final for a similar offense? This is maybe the one thing that's really frustrating there, but Jimenez, you cannot do that in the age of VAR. Still, Milan do get the equalizer. After Jimenez's shot is blocked, it falls to João Felix, who puts it home in the 39th minute, and it's level scores. And Milan actually well in the game. The game then turned after Paredes freak in the 58th minute. Really well taken. However, I actually would like Maignan to actually save that one, or maybe have a few more players in the wall. So that did not look good, but the free kick itself was really, really good. But also, Leao had a mega chance to get the game on level terms again. However, it is Wheeler who saves that, and then very late on Cristante, as Milan were pushing, gets the 3-1. Of course, Conceição also gets him sent off, so he will not have to manage the last game of the season, which might actually be a good turn to sack him as well. After the game though, it was all about Ranieri, and Ranieri received a hero's welcome at the Olimpico. No Milan fans there as well, with a great tifo and then all the tears. And I absolutely loved when he said, 60 years ago I was standing up with you there in the Curva Sud, and now I'm here. I've managed this team. This is my team. This is my city. He got, of course, a little statue of a Capitoline wolf handed over to him by Captain Pellegrini. It was the stuff that makes you tear up. And in a good way, not like what Milan is doing to me this season. In In one of the most entertaining games of the weekend, Fiorentina beat Bologna 3-2 at home, a result that barely keeps them in contention for a European spot, also thanks to Lazio losing points. It didn't matter much for Bologna, who were still celebrating kind of the Coppa Italia win. However, they were fighting hard because this is a duel that actually matters for their fans. Fiorentina against Bologna, they're just on opposite sides of the Apennine mountain range, just an hour apart. Parisi gave Fiorentina the lead in the 13th minute. However, it was an equalizer in the 61st by Dalinga, and then all hell broke loose kind of. Richardson gives Fiorentina the lead again, tapping it home, and Orsolini equalized in the 79th minute before Moise Kean just plows himself through and gets the ball over the line in the 84th minute. Miranda is then sent off a red card for a slap. Honestly, I didn't really see much, so it was a harsh red card, but in the end, this didn't have much impact on the final result. Juve though put themselves in a very fine position, beating Udinese 2-0 at home, meaning they're now in pole position of snatching the final Champions League spot, which is so much needed regarding their finances. And they had a hard time breaking down Udinese. I mean, there are plenty of chances, none bigger than Colomuani, who was one-on-one with the goalie and puts it wide. So it was not the game of Colomuani. However, Kenan Yildiz showed up in the 61st minute, putting it on to Nico Gonzalez, who gets the go-ahead goal, and then Yildiz also assists Vlahovic, who may have gotten his final goal at home for Juventus, although I could very well see him staying, and so Juve just about may have salvaged a bad season. Let's also look at a very enthralling relegation battle in Serie A, where I hope you do not have a team to root for, because it's also hard attack stuff in there. Verona needed a win at home against Como, who had more or less nothing to play for. However, despite having a chance, they found themselves 1-0 down at the halftime break through a Kakare goal. Lazovic in the 69th gets the equalizer. That at the bare minimum gives him a 3-point cushion. However, it is still not enough to talk about safety. Cagliari, meanwhile, playing in weird light blue jerseys, get an emphatic 3-0 home win over Venezia, meaning Cagliari are saved. The one team that actually secured safety on this weekend. It's Jeremina in the 11th minute already opening and scoring. Piccoli in the 41st made things certain. And then they put in some magic with the goal by Diola in the 71st minute. Washed around, so much one-touch action and backheels in there. It was an absolute beautiful goal that you wouldn't expect from a side that just escaped relegation. And with that loss to Cagliari, Venezia were now in a very precarious situation, and both of their main rivals actually got wins. Empoli were 1-0 down through a Birindelli goal in Monza, already relegated Monza. However, they turned it around early in the second half when Colombo and Vitti score in the 49th and 51st minute, and then an own goal makes it the final 3-1 scoreline. Empoli looking relatively well positioned to actually survive. And Lecce also got their first home win of this year in a 1-0 win over Torino. Again, a Torino side that really didn't have much to play for, but Lecce really labored hard and had a hard time breaking Torino down. Kristovic missing a few chances, but he also assisted the absolute beautiful goal by Ramadani just after the halftime break. If you have not seen that one, what a wonderful strike to get it up in the high corner. And Ramadani never scores. So this relegation battle actually gave us two of the best goals of this Serie A season, I would argue. The current standings with a round to go make for very interesting reading and sets up a rather interesting final match day. We have Napoli sitting a point ahead of Inter still, and now they have a home game against an opponent that doesn't have much to play for. However, there is rivalry, whereas Inter fans will all flock to Como to hope for a Napoli slip up. Atalanta already safe, nothing to play for. Then it is for the final Champions League spot. Juventus have the upper hand. They could get a win against Venezia and they're done and dusted. Should they slip up, Roma actually will hope that Torino will do them a favor, as they surely wouldn't want their city rivals to get into the Champions League. So Roma is in pole position to pound should Juventus slip up, and Lazio have to hope that both of these slip up and they get the win over Lecce, who is still in a relegation battle. Fiorentina only can make it into Europe should Lazio lose and they win, because Fiorentina own the head-to-head, having beaten Lazio twice this season already. Bologna is in the Europa League and Milan, yeah. On the bottom, Cagliari safe, but then Verona need to at least pick up a further point. Otherwise, they have to go into a tiebreaker. We'll talk about that in a sec. Parma also not quite safe. They need to pick up also at least a point. Better to, they have to go to Atalanta. Usually not easy, but with Atalanta nothing to play for. Yeah, we'll see. But it's really all between Venezia, Empoli and Lecce. Venezia have the toughest task. They have to face Juve at home. And while Venezia have given top teams some trouble, I just cannot see them winning. So for me, Venezia are more or less down and out, and it's between Lecce and Empoli. And we already talked about that. Lecce have to go to Lazio, so not a good position. Whereas Empoli have a home game against Hellas Verona. At least Hellas have something to play for, so that might be interesting. And maybe if Lazio see that they really cannot improve their current standings, maybe they let it slide and let Lecce in. So it's really, really intriguing. Talking about tiebreakers, we know that on top of the table, should Napoli and Inter finish up level on points, there will be a spareggio, and more on that when we talk about the upcoming schedule. A final for the Scudetto, as far as I know, it will be played in Rome. As far as I know, and please correct me in the comments below, there is no spareggio for relegation. It's all down to head-to-head. If teams are level, then there's a mini-league between the teams that are level on points, and that then will decide the final relegation spots. Okay, let's look at the next round, and again, Serie A and its scheduling. Because Inter is playing the Champions League final, they needed to account for a potential spareggio to be played on Monday evening, and therefore we play both title-deciding games on Friday evening. What are you doing to me? I wanted to go to the final last game, although there's really not much to play for except for our opponents, but that forces me almost to stay home. I really hate that one, because that's the title decider. I actually think it will be decided on Friday evening, and I hate that it's Friday evening. Saturday, the two games don't mean much. Bologna against Genoa and Milan against Monza. Maybe they decide for this 8th spot, and then it's all Sunday evening. All relegation and the Champions League spots will be decided. I think Lazio-Lecce is a game to watch there, as is of course Empoli against Hellas Verona. Those two are the main games. Roma, we have to see. Venezia against Juventus also has quite something riding. So actually 3 games. Please make it in such a way that you switch back and forth, because otherwise I'm going crazy. I cannot keep track of as many games at once. But yeah, it's all to play for in these games. Even Udinese Fiorentina, which seems like a meh game at this point. Yeah, Fiorentina still could make it into Europe, so has to be played at that time. It's quite exciting, I gotta say. By now it should be obvious that while I think this is a really exciting Serie A season, although both teams that are vying for a title are anything but perfect, and I think this goes throughout the league, very low points totals, relatively close together. The one thing that really bothers me, there's nothing exciting for Milan anymore. Yes, the cup final kept the excitement up and kept me hoping for a while, but we all knew that it's a fool's hope, and I hate myself in a way that I even got that high looking into the cup final and thinking that we might win that one. Nah, was never gonna happen. So yeah, that's the thing that really annoys me, because the season itself is really exciting, but as we saw, Milan has nothing to play this season. At least avoid 9th place, but they will end up in 9th place, and then the future will show what will happen. Any case, please let me know, who will win the title? Can Napoli get it home? Will they be able to break down Cagliari? And it's a huge rivalry between Napoli and Cagliari. They don't like each other. I have a Cagliari already on the beach and probably celebrating. So let's see about that. And Inter also need to deliver while also keeping themselves fresh for a Champions League final. They surely would like to win. Would be great for Serie A. Although I have to say, they don't really have my support in that one. I gotta be honest, even with my love for Serie A, cannot bring myself to support Inter in that final. In any case, please drop a line below, give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video, subscribe to my channel if you want to see more videos like these, and I'll talk to you soon about more things in my Serie A universe. Bye! Hey there! I really hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, here are some videos and playlists that you may enjoy too. Also, please consider subscribing to my channel and hit the little bell icon so you get notified whenever something happens in my soccer universe. And with that, have a wonderful day. Bye!